Weddings are full of moments: the first kiss, the first dance, a couple's laughter, and sometimes tears. But those details, those seemingly small and often overlooked elements, can help give the day a unique character. While to me and the couples who tend to hire me, they're secondary to the story of the day itself. But they can also be representative of a couple's personalities, their story, and the effort they put into making the day what it is. Let's talk about it. Being a documentarian, wedding photography is all about the people. My focus is on moments and personalities, showing emotions and connections that tell the story of this couple on this day. Woven into the story are often the items the couple spent time, energy, or money on that make the day more special to them. Sometimes these details are family heirlooms or other objects that have deep meaning. If it's meaningful to my couples, it's meaningful to me, and these objects deserve to be photographed as well as I'm able to. I keep my eye out for these details throughout the day, but sometimes they're small or positioned in such a way that the couple knows they're there, but aren't necessarily meant for their guests to see. When I have my final meeting with a couple before the wedding day, I'll ask about these things so I know what's important to them. A semi-common detail is charms affixed to a bride's bouquet that contains small photographs of loved ones who have passed. Maybe it's a parent or a grandparent or a pet, so I make an effort to capture that tiny detail. I've had brides who have repurposed a grandmother's wedding veil to wrap around their bouquet, or one bride who had a fabric swatch from her deceased father's tie sewn into the interior of her dress that was worn next to her heart. More playfully, I had one couple who, when they entered the ceremony site, had their wedding party carrying banners on poles representing their respective families, Game of Thrones style, which were then replaced by a new banner once they were officially married. Throughout the reception hall, they had strung from the ceiling dozens upon dozens of triangle flags that contained logos and insignia from every science fiction and fantasy property you can think of. They also had dragons on top of cupcakes and a real hamster with a tiny bow tie. I photographed the little guy during prep. It didn't come along to the ceremony itself. The timing on a wedding day of when to photograph the details can vary from wedding to wedding. Most commonly, I get reception room details done during cocktail hour. Either I'll photograph them myself or send a trusted second to take care of them while I'm photographing the family formals. I want to get them when they're all set up, so I'm not going back and forth because maybe one thing hasn't yet been put out onto the tables, but also before guests come into the room who might busy up the background. If it's a tent wedding, people are very likely to be around, so I try to get done earlier when I can and maybe shoot from a higher angle to fill the background of the table, for example, to minimize that particular distraction. When I'm doing prep, I try to get the dress and shoes and jewelry done first thing. It always takes the bride and the bridesmaids a beat to get used to my being there. Typically, I'm the only guy in the room at that time, so there can be a small adjustment period. After I introduce myself and meet everyone, I'll then take the dress and do something with both that and the shoes. Sometimes I'll photograph the jewelry on a reflective surface or find a nice background for it. But if the bride is already wearing it when I arrive, I'll photograph in honor, incorporating her into the photo, connecting those details and their owner and deepening their meaning. The same goes for cufflinks. An old friend used to call them details with heartbeats, which I'm confident he got from another photographer, so I'm paying that parlance forward. Later in the evening, I'll tackle the ring shot. I don't do them at every wedding, but do more often than not. In the best case scenario, I'll find something creative to do with the rings that ties them into a theme the couple might be having or connects them to the day using another detail that was on display. I've used and continue to use different types of lighting for the details. I'm generally an off-camera lighting guy, so I'll use a single flash on a stand, either bare or with a modifier of some kind. Usually receptions are indoors, so the ambient light is generally too low to use well. But if it's outdoors or under a tent, I can easily use the sun or the tent itself as a giant softbox and use the natural ambient light in that case. Sometimes I'll use very shallow depth of field and sometimes deeper focus depending on what the detail is and the feel I want that individual frame to have. It's all situational, so there's no real formula. I do want the photos to be consistent though, so I'll aim for similar lighting so they're cohesive when viewed in the context of a full collection of photographs. A macro lens can come in handy for photographing details, especially if they're on the small side. Quality macro lenses can be pricey, so if you don't have one, a good 50mm lens can typically focus pretty closely. Not as closely as an actual macro lens, but often closely enough. Particularly if you have a modern camera with a lot of megapixels where you can crop in and still have a very usable file. I happen to have a 100mm macro, which is fantastic, but the depth of field on that thing, even at smaller apertures, is pretty shallow. So I tend to use the 50 rather than the 100 unless it's a very small object. Circling back to backgrounds, incorporating the environment so that the photograph has some context can be done in a few ways. If it's in a barn, for example, maybe there's a wood surface that matches the interior you can place objects upon. If there's an element of the couple's personalities on display, you could collage items together. And as a backup, you can always put the flowers a foot or two behind a detail, throwing them out of focus, for example, for nice colors and texture that will fill the frame. Finally, do yourself a favor and be organized. It's good to have a game plan going into the day, but as we all know, weddings can take on a life of their own, and sometimes plans and itineraries go out the window as the day evolves. Know what details are important to your couple and if there are objects with them that are meaningful. As you gain more experience, you'll just know what to look for and the best time to photograph these details. The more communication you have with your couples, the more success you'll find, both in the quality of your work and in getting the job done as best you can for your clients. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your taking the time to listen. If you like what you heard in this video, please like and subscribe. So tell me, what did I miss about photographing details? Do you have any advice for me or to share with other viewers? Feel free to let me know in the comments. If you'd like to see more videos like this and hear more stories, check out this other one I made for you. This is Ask a Wedding Photographer. I'm Seth Kaye, and I'm here to help.